All right, let's talk about this Family Guy episode, shall we? You know, Seth MacFarlane, the guy who also gave us American Dad and The Cleveland Show. Bless his heart. He's got this whole thing. He loves him some 80s action movies. He really, really loves them. And sometimes, bless his heart again, it feels like he makes Family Guy episodes just to have an excuse to rewatch Top Gun for the 1,000th time and then cram as many references as humanly possible into 22 minutes of animation. And this one? This one is peak Seth MacFarlane flexing his deep cuts and obscure callbacks. We're not just talking a little nod here and there. We're talking a full-blown, blowout, I literally rewound to check that because I thought I was losing my mind kind of episode. Like, is this a Family Guy episode or a Top Gun fan fiction screenplay that accidentally got animated? I'm still not sure. We're about to dive headfirst into a glorious, nonsensical mess that blends Stewie and Brian with Maverick and Goose. And frankly, I'm strapped in and ready for the G-force. Get ready, because we are going to dissect this thing piece by piece. And trust me, there are some things in here that will make you question everything you thought you knew about naval aviation, friendship, and why we keep watching this show. Prepare for launch, because this is going to be a wild ride, and I guarantee you there's one moment involving a certain beloved character that will leave you completely speechless, and not in a good way. Now, before we blast off into the full breakdown, if you're finding yourself nodding along, maybe even chuckling a little at this madness, consider hitting that subscribe button. It's like giving a little boost to our YouTube engine, you know? Plus, it ensures you don't miss any of our future deep dives into animated insanity. We've got a lot more to cover, and your support really makes this whole operation fly. So, what is this episode actually about? On the surface, it's this big Top Gun parody, right? Maverick and Goose of the stars, sort of. Peter and the gang are basically just there to be the weird, inappropriate observers in the background of this bizarre 80s movie homage. We get all the hits, the volleyball scene, the bar scene, the whole danger zone vibe. But underneath all that nostalgia bait, it feels like the show is grappling, in its own twisted way, with the idea of legacy, of not living up to expectations, and the fear of repeating past mistakes. It's Peter and his crew stuck in this dream sequence, or maybe just a reality warp, where they're all forced to be characters from Top Gun. Brian's Goose, Peter's Maverick, Meg's Charlie, Stewie's being Stewie, probably trying to assassinate someone or invent a time machine. And Chris is probably played by a talking dog. It's a whole thing. The writing here felt ambitious. Like they had this huge idea, this massive playground of movie references, and they just threw everything at the wall. Some of it sticks, some of it splatters. The jokes are a mix of incredibly sharp observations about the movie and then just pure Family Guy shock value. It's the usual swing. Visually, it's got that Family Guy polish, but the pacing felt a little frantic, like they were trying to cram a feature film's worth of references into a TV episode. They nail the aesthetic of Top Gun, the quick cuts, the sun flares, the aviator glasses, but does it all come together? My verdict is, it's a strong effort, a solid 7.8 out of 10. It's fun, it's reference-heavy, but it kind of loses its way in its own ambition. It's definitely one that fans of 80s movies will get a kick out of, but it might leave others a bit bewildered. Let's talk about that opening sequence, the entire framing device of the episode, where Brian and Stewie are just watching TV, and this classic Top Gun theme song plays. They even get the visuals down, the jets, the sun, the whole 9 yards. It's like they're saying, hey, we're doing this now. And then, bam, we're in the world of Top Gun. But it's not quite right, is it? Peter's Maverick, obviously. Brian's Goose. Meg's Charlie. It's all there, but it's filtered through the Family Guy lens. And the first moment that really grabbed me, the one that made me go, okay, they're really going for it, was when Peter, as Maverick, is trying to hit on Charlie, played by Meg, and he's just saying all the classic Maverick lines. But it's Meg, and the entire context is so bizarre. He's supposed to be this super cool, brooding pilot, and he's talking to Meg, who's trying to be this cool instructor. It was so awkward, so profoundly Family Guy, that it was almost brilliant. The dialogue they wrote for Meg as Charlie was surprisingly sharp, actually. She's got this whole scene where she's rattling off plane names, F-5, A-4, MiG-23, and then throws in a blimp. The joke there is that she's trying to prove she's tough and knows her stuff, and the guys are all like, yeah, right, a blimp? And then Goose, Brian, chimes in with the whole we gave it the finger bit. It's a good callback to the movie, but it's twisted because it's Brian and Meg.
The sheer audacity of putting Meg in a role like that and having her deliver lines with that much confidence, you have to admire it, even if it's just to set up a joke about how she's probably not going to be in the sequel. It's a classic Family Guy move. Take a beloved character, stick them in a ridiculous situation, and see how much chaos they can create. The scene where they're playing volleyball, the iconic Top Gun volleyball scene, but it's Peter and the guys, and it's less about their athletic prowess and more about their general incompetence and weird obsessions. Peter's trying to be the tough guy, but he's just being Peter. And then there's the whole bomber joke, that they decide to bomb the volleyball. It's this perfect blend of parody and the show's inherent desire to be outrageous and a little bit dark. It's not just a reference, it's a subversion of the reference. They take something that was supposed to be about camaraderie and athletic excellence and turn it into, well, Peter blowing stuff up. It's that moment where you realize this isn't just a straight homage, it's a deconstruction. The scene with Charlie, Meg, explaining the mission to the pilots, and then Maverick, Peter, interrupts with the silent auction at my kid's school line. That's pure Family Guy, isn't it? It's the show constantly reminding you of its own existence, its own universe, even when it's playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. It's a fourth wall break that's so ingrained in the show's DNA that it feels natural, even when it's completely nonsensical in the context of the Top Gun world. It grounds the parody, bringing it back to the Griffin's absurd reality. The entire "you can't handle the Goose" bit near the end, when Peter is freaking out after Brian's Goose character dies, is another prime example of the show blending its own established characters and jokes with the borrowed narrative. It's less about Top Gun and more about Peter's specific brand of panic and his relationship with Brian. The way they handle Goose's death is, well, it's Family Guy. It's shock value mixed with a weirdly heartfelt yet still offensive attempt at emotional impact. Peter's reaction isn't about Maverick's grief. It's about Peter's fear of losing Brian, but expressed through the filter of a movie character who just lost his best friend. And the fact that they bring up the sequel and how Charlie, Meg, might not be in it, that's the show acknowledging its own meta-narrative. It's like they're saying, we know this is a movie parody, and we know how movie sequels work, and we're going to comment on that within the parody itself. It's a layered approach that can be either genius or incredibly lazy, depending on your mood. The inclusion of Rooster, Goose's son, and the entire storyline with Maverick potentially not picking him for the mission, that's the episode really digging into the emotional core of Top Gun, but with Peter at the helm. It's about the burden of legacy, the fear of failure, and the complex father-son relationships. And Peter, as Maverick, struggling with whether to trust Rooster, played by one of the other guys, maybe Chris. It's funny because it's Peter who can barely manage his own kids, trying to mentor a pilot who's supposed to be the son of his best friend. It's a classic Family Guy inversion, taking a serious theme and having the most unqualified character tackle it. The whole L. Ron Hubbard tangent, that's pure Stewie, isn't it? Or maybe Brian, if he's feeling particularly esoteric. It's these little detours, these non-sequitur jokes that have absolutely nothing to do with Top Gun that really cement it as a Family Guy episode. It's like they're saying, we're going to do this Top Gun thing, but we're also going to shoehorn in our favorite random facts and obsessions because why the hell not? It keeps you on your toes, even if it's also completely derailing the narrative. The moment Iceman, played by Quagmire I assume, shows up to give Maverick advice about Rooster, that's another level of meta. Quagmire giving advice in a serious movie context, it's just inherently hilarious. And the fact that he's dying, but he's on vocal rest for karaoke, that's such a perfect twisted callback to Quagmire's own character. It's taking these iconic Top Gun roles and just stuffing Family Guy characters into them and seeing what hilariously uncomfortable situations arise. The ending, with Maverick finally going to fly the mission, and it's revealed that it's actually 35 years later, and it's not Top Gun anymore, it's Top Gun Maverick. That's the ultimate punchline. It's the show saying, we've played with the original for a while, now let's play with the sequel. It's a full circle moment that's both clever and a little bit sad, considering how much the show itself has been around for ages, just like Maverick. The dialogue about the unnamed country and the uranium enrichment plant, that's Family Guy's typical political commentary, vague, nonsensical, but always there. It's a convenient plot device to get our characters into danger, but it also feels like a subtle jab at how often these kinds of geopolitical threats are presented in action movies without much specificity. It's the show's way of saying, we don't need real-world issues to make a point. We can just invent them. Now, let's talk about the characters and how they fared in this Top Gun fever dream. Peter, as Maverick, was, well, he was Peter. He had the swagger of a guy who thought he was cool, but it was all underpinned by his usual immaturity and selfishness. His best moments were when he was completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation, like when he interrupted Charlie with the silent auction line.
It was a perfect encapsulation of his character, always bringing things back to himself and his own ridiculous life. He wasn't a great Maverick, but he was a great Peter in a Maverick costume. Brian, as Goose, got the short end of the stick, literally, because he dies. But for the time he was on screen, he played the loyal, slightly exasperated wingman role well enough. He's the straight man to Peter's chaos, which is his usual dynamic anyway, so it fit. His death felt more like a plot device to trigger Peter's meltdown than a genuine emotional blow, which is pretty typical for how Family Guy handles character deaths. Meg, as Charlie, was surprisingly effective. She had some genuinely funny lines, and she leaned into the character's authority, making the absurdity of the situation even funnier. It's rare we see Meg get a role where she's actually competent and commanding, so this was a nice change of pace, even if it was just for a parody. Stewie, bless his tiny evil heart, was kind of sidelined, mostly existing as the audience surrogate, watching this whole thing unfold. He had a few good quips about the absurdity of it all, and that L. Ron Hubbard factoid was peak Stewie. He's the one character who can comment on the narrative without being fully immersed in it, which is a useful tool for the writers. Chris, as one of the pilots, probably Rooster, if we're being honest, was mostly just there to be Chris. He had a few dopey lines, and his general demeanor fit the confused, maybe slightly dim pilot role. It's hard to give him much heat when he's playing a part that's so close to his default setting. The other characters who popped up as various Top Gun archetypes, like Quagmire as Iceman, were more like cameos, just throwing their characters' established traits into the mix. Quagmire's vocal rest for karaoke bit was pure gold, a perfect fusion of his character and the Top Gun setting. It's these kinds of moments that make the episode feel less like a straight parody and more like a Family Guy skit dressed up as Top Gun.
All right, let's dig into the hidden gems and Easter eggs in this chaotic tribute. First off, that opening theme song. It's not just the Top Gun theme. They actually recreate the iconic imagery with the jets flying in formation, the sun flares, all of it, but with that Family Guy animation style. It's a subtle nod, but it sets the tone immediately. They're not just referencing the movie, they're mimicking its presentation. Then there's the specific dialogue when Maverick is trying to get with Charlie. I feel the need for speed. That's straight from the movie, of course, but the way Peter delivers it, with his usual lack of actual speed or competence, makes it a punchline in itself. It's funny because he's failing to embody the coolness of the line. Also, pay attention to the pilots' names when they're introduced. They're not just generic pilots, they're characters with names that subtly echo Top Gun archetypes, like Slider, who might be playing a similar role. It's these little touches that show the writers actually knew the source material inside and out. The volleyball scene obviously is a direct callback, but the joke isn't just the volleyball, it's the reason they're playing. In Top Gun, it's about team bonding and showing off. Here, it's a setup for Peter's idea to just bomb the ball, which is peak Family Guy aggression and lack of sportsmanship. It's taking a classic scene and completely subverting its purpose. The talking past girls line from Charlie when she's introduced as an instructor at waitress school is a really specific jab at the original Top Gun's portrayal of women in the service. Charlie, played by Meg, is an instructor, but she's also in a less respected field in the parody, and that line hints at the sexism within that world, both real and fictionalized. It's a smart little piece of commentary. And finally, that whole bit about L. Ron Hubbard being the youngest Eagle Scout, that's a deep cut. It's the kind of obscure, slightly bizarre fact that Stewie or Brian would bring up, and it has absolutely nothing to do with Top Gun, but it fits the show's penchant for throwing in random trivia. It's a classic Family Guy detour that rewards the viewers who are paying close attention to the non sequiturs. Let's play the rewrite game for a bit. What if they did it differently? Okay, first thing, that moment where Peter as Maverick is trying to get with Meg as Charlie, and he says that line about the silent auction at my kid's school. It's funny, it's on brand, but what if instead of just interrupting Charlie, Maverick actually tried to impress Charlie with it?
Like he's trying to show her how connected he is, how important his kid's school is. It would have made his obliviousness even more profound, and it would have created a more direct comedic conflict between his attempt at seduction and his inherent narcissism. It's a small change, but it would have added another layer to his characterization within the parody. Second, the handling of Goose's death. Brian just dies. It's sudden, it's abrupt, and Peter freaks out. What if, instead of just dying, Goose had a moment where he realized he was going to die, and he gave Maverick some sort of profound, movie-ending advice that Peter then completely butchers or ignores? Like, Goose says, "Maverick, remember the little things." And Peter's response is,
Yeah, like remembering where I parked my car? It would have made Brian's death and Peter's reaction a little more character-driven and a little less just random shock value. It would have leaned into the tragicomic aspect of their friendship. And third, the ending. The reveal that it's actually 35 years later and it's Top Gun Maverick. It's a good punchline, but what if the reveal was more gradual? What if Maverick, played by Peter, started experiencing flashes of the actual Maverick movie? Like snippets of Tom Cruise talking directly to him, or scenes from the sequel appearing like glitches in his reality. It would have made the meta-commentary even more integrated and less like a simple time jump. It would have felt like Peter's mind was truly breaking under the weight of all these movie references. It's like the show could have leaned harder into the idea that Peter is so obsessed with Top Gun that he's not just parodying it, he's losing himself in it. It would have been a more unsettling and perhaps funnier exploration of celebrity obsession. So, the final verdict on this Top Gun episode, I'm giving it a 7.4 out of 10. Why 7.4? Well, the ambition is there, the jokes land more often than they miss, and the commitment to the parody is admirable. The moments where Family Guy's own brand of absurdity clashes with the Top Gun narrative are gold. It excels at taking beloved movie moments and twisting them into something uniquely crass and hilarious. But it loses points because, at times, it feels like a collection of Top Gun references strung together with a Family Guy plot, rather than a cohesive story. The pacing can be a bit much, and some of the jokes feel forced. Who is this episode for? It's for the hardcore Family Guy fans who also happen to love Top Gun, or at least recognize the references.
It's for people who appreciate a deep dive into movie parodies and don't mind a bit of fourth wall breaking and crass humor. It's not an episode for someone looking for a deep, emotional story or a perfectly crafted narrative. What would have pushed the score higher? A more integrated storyline that felt less like a series of sketches and more like a complete story, even within the parody framework. If the Peter as Maverick arc had felt more earned, and if the stakes had genuinely mattered for longer than a few minutes. This episode is a prime example of Seth MacFarlane's particular brand of nostalgia. A loving tribute that's also deeply cynical and self-aware. It's a product of its time, just like Top Gun itself, and it's got that same blend of iconic moments and questionable character choices. It's a messy, hilarious, and ultimately a very Family Guy way to celebrate a classic film.